Maya Brown had spent the last 12 years walking the same downtown streets in patrol boots that had seen better days. At 43, she moved through her shifts with the kind of steady calm that came from knowing her neighborhood like the back of her hand. She wasn't the type of officer who craved glory or promotions. She just wanted to keep people safe, especially the kids who played in Palmer Park every afternoon after school. Maya lived alone in a small apartment above Henderson's Bakery on Maple Street. The smell of fresh bread woke her most mornings before her alarm ever could. She had never married, never had children of her own, but the neighborhood kids knew her by name. They'd wave when they saw her cruiser roll past, and she always kept a pocket full of stickers shaped like badges to hand out. Her canine partner, Duke, was a 4-year-old German shepherd with intelligent brown eyes and a nose that could track a scent through a thunderstorm. They'd been together for 3 years, and Maya trusted that dog more than most people she knew. Duke slept at the foot of her bed every night, and on her days off, they'd hike the trails along Riverside Canyon until her legs ached and his tongue hung happy and tired. But lately, something had shifted in the air. Captain Raymond Foster, the new precinct commander, had arrived 6 months earlier with a briefcase full of new policies and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He was a tall man with silver hair and a voice that could fill a room, and he had made it clear from day one that he didn't think much of officers like Maya, the ones who'd rather talk to troubled teens than arrest them, who knew every shop owner's name and actually cared about community trust. Foster wanted numbers. Arrests. Headlines. Results that looked good on paper. And Maya Brown, with her quiet approach and her loyal dog, didn't fit into his vision at all. It started with the schedules. Maya had always worked the afternoon shift, 3 to 11, the hours when kids were out and families needed to see a friendly face on their streets. But one Tuesday morning, she arrived at the precinct to find her name reassigned to the graveyard shift, 11 at night until 7 in the morning. She approached Captain Foster's office, Duke's leash wrapped loosely around her wrist. Foster barely looked up from his computer screen when she knocked. "Captain, I think there's been a mistake with the schedule," Maya said politely, keeping her voice even. "I've been on afternoons for 8 years. The community, no mistake, Brown." Foster's eyes finally met hers, cold and dismissive. "We're restructuring. You'll adapt. That's what good officers do." Maya felt the words land like stones in her chest, but she nodded. "Yes, sir." "May I ask why the change?" Foster leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Your clearance rate is below department average. Your patrol reports lack intensity. I need officers who are proactive, not social workers with badges. Graveyard shift will give you time to focus on real police work." The accusation stung because it was dressed up as fact. Maya had spent years building trust, de-escalating conflicts before they became crimes, connecting struggling families with resources. That work didn't show up in arrest statistics, but it mattered. It saved lives. "Understood, Captain," she said quietly, turning to leave. "And Brown?" Foster's voice stopped her at the door. "The dog stays here during shift changes. I don't want Duke wandering around the precinct off duty." New policy. Maya's jaw tightened. Duke was more than her partner, he was her family. But she only nodded again, swallowing the protest that burned in her throat. Outside, Officer James Chen, a young cop who'd started just a year ago, caught her eye with a sympathetic look. He'd been watching from his desk, and something in his expression told Maya she wasn't the only one who'd felt Foster's cold indifference. The injustice was just beginning. Over the next 2 months, Maya felt the walls closing in. The graveyard shift meant she rarely saw sunlight. She'd leave for work in darkness and come home to darkness, catching only a few hours of restless sleep before the cycle began again. Duke seemed confused by the new routine, his internal clock thrown off, his energy mismatched with hers. But worse than the exhaustion was the isolation. Captain Foster had begun assigning her to the emptiest, most industrial parts of town, warehouse districts where nothing ever happened, loading docks where the only movement was the occasional raccoon. She'd drive through those deserted streets for hours, Duke alert in the back seat, both of them waiting for calls that never came. Meanwhile, Foster made sure everyone knew he was watching her. He'd started requiring daily written reports, far more detailed than any other officer had to submit. He questioned her decisions in morning briefings, his tone just barely polite enough to avoid being called disrespectful. He never said anything explicitly wrong, but the message was clear: he wanted her gone. One night, Maya stopped by Rosie's Diner on 4th Street, the only place open past midnight that still served real coffee. Rosie Martinez, the owner, had known Maya for years. She poured a cup without being asked and leaned against the counter. "You look tired, honey," Rosie said softly. "Everything okay?" Maya managed a small smile. "Just adjusting to the new schedule." Rosie's eyes held understanding. She'd seen officers come and go, seen how the job could wear people down from the inside. "That new captain's been making changes, huh?" "You could say that." Before Rosie could respond, Maya's radio crackled. "A domestic disturbance call on the east side, finally, something real." She left cash on the counter and headed out with Duke, grateful for the distraction. But when she arrived at the address, another unit was already there. Officer James had responded first, and the situation was calm. He looked surprised to see her. "Dispatch said you were closest," Maya said, confused. James frowned. "I was on the west side. You should have gotten here first." Something wasn't right. It was a cold Tuesday evening in late October when everything shattered. Maya had just finished her shift and was walking Duke through Palmer Park, letting him stretch his legs before they headed home. The park was mostly empty except for a few joggers and a woman sitting on a bench near the playground, watching a little girl on the swings. The girl looked about 7 years old, with braided hair and a bright pink jacket. She was swinging high, laughing, her joy cutting through the gray autumn air. Maya smiled, remembering when she used to push her niece on those same swings years ago. But then Maya noticed something that made her pause. The woman on the bench wasn't watching the girl with warmth. Her body language was stiff, impatient. She kept checking her phone, glancing around nervously. And when the little girl called out, "Can I go on the slide?" the woman's response was sharp, almost angry. Maya's instincts prickled. She moved closer, Duke walking calmly beside her. That's when she saw the girl's face more clearly. There were faint bruises on her arm, barely visible beneath her jacket sleeve. And her eyes, there was something in them that Maya recognized from years of responding to troubled homes. Fear disguised as obedience. Maya was about to approach when her phone buzzed. A text from Captain Foster: "Report to my office immediately. Disciplinary matter." Her heart sank. She glanced back at the girl, torn. Duke sensed her tension and whined softly. The woman on the bench had stood up now, calling the child over in a voice that was too controlled, too tight. Maya made a decision. She texted Foster back, "On my way." 20 minutes. She needed to check on this child first. But before she could take another step, the woman grabbed the girl's hand roughly and started walking toward the parking lot. The girl stumbled, trying to keep up, and Maya saw her mouth something that looked like help. Duke saw it too. His ears pricked forward, and he pulled slightly on the leash, his training kicking in. He knew distress when he saw it. Maya followed at a distance, every instinct screaming that something was very wrong. Maya watched from across the parking lot as the woman shoved the little girl into a silver sedan. The girl's face was pressed against the window for just a moment, eyes wide and searching, before the car pulled away. Maya memorized the license plate, her mind already working through procedures, protocols, and the very real possibility that she was about to disobey a direct order from her captain. She called it into dispatch, keeping her voice calm and professional. Possible welfare check needed. Silver sedan, license Victor Tango 7492. Female child, approximately 7 years old, visible signs of distress and possible injury. Requesting follow-up. The dispatcher acknowledged, and Maya stood there in the empty parking lot with Duke, her heart pounding. She knew what she had to do, but she also knew the risk. Foster was already looking for reasons to push her out. If she pursued this without solid evidence, he'd call it harassment, overreach, emotional judgment. But that little girl's face stayed with her. 20 minutes later, Maya walked into Foster's office. He was waiting with a folder open on his desk, his expression carved from stone. Officer Brown. Sit. He didn't look at her. I've been reviewing your performance reports. Your response times have deteriorated. Your arrest numbers are embarrassingly low. And I've received complaints. Maya's stomach dropped. Complaints from whom, sir? That's confidential. But the pattern is clear. You're not performing at the level this department requires. Foster finally looked up, and his eyes were cold. I'm recommending you for a fitness for duty evaluation. Psychological assessment. Effective immediately, you're on administrative leave pending the results. The words hit like a punch. Administrative leave. It was a polite way of saying she was being pushed out, discredited, erased. Sir, you're dismissed, Brown. Leave your badge and service weapon with Sergeant Davis. Duke will be reassigned to another handler. Maya felt her world tilt. Not Duke. They couldn't take Duke. But she stood, keeping her composure even as everything inside her wanted to scream. She walked out of that office with her head high, Duke at her side, and she made herself a promise. She would fight back, but she would do it the right way. Outside, Officer James was waiting. Maya, I heard. I'm sorry. She looked at him, really looked, and saw something unexpected, determination. James, I need your help. Maya spent her forced leave doing what she did best, patient, quiet detective work. She couldn't wear her badge, but she could still think like an officer. And she had one crucial advantage: James Chin believed in her. James started digging into Captain Foster's background during his off hours, while Maya focused on the little girl from the park. She'd filed the report with dispatch, but she knew Foster could bury it if he wanted to. So she went directly to Child Protective Services, using her years of credibility and relationships to push the case forward. The social worker assigned to the case was a woman named Angela Price, someone Maya had worked with on dozens of cases over the years. Angela listened carefully as Maya described what she had seen, and together they ran the license plate. It came back registered to a woman named Veronica Lang, age 32, with no prior CPS involvement but a recent history of evictions and unstable employment. "I'll do a welfare check," Angela promised. "But Maya, you need to be careful. If Foster finds out you're still working cases while on leave, I know. But something's wrong with that child, Angela. I can feel it." Angela nodded. She'd learned to trust Maya's instincts years ago. Meanwhile, James had discovered something troubling. Captain Foster's transfer to their precinct hadn't been a promotion, it had been a lateral move, almost a demotion. His previous department had been investigating complaints of discrimination and hostile work environment before Head quietly accepted the new position. The complaints had been dropped when he left, but the pattern was clear. Foster had a history of pushing out officers who didn't fit his narrow vision of policing. More importantly, James found that 3 other officers had been placed on administrative leave under Foster's command in just 6 months. All of them had been veterans with strong community connections. All of them had eventually resigned rather than fight the system. Foster was cleaning house, removing anyone who challenged his authority or his methods. James called Maya late one night, his voice urgent. "There's more. Foster's been manipulating dispatch records. Remember when you said you should have been first to that domestic call? He's been reassigning your calls to other units, making it look like you're slow to respond. He's building a false case against you." Maya felt anger rise hot in her chest, but underneath it was something colder, sharper: strategy. "Can you prove it?" "I'm working on it. But Maya, we need something bigger. Something that shows he's not just unfair, he's dangerous." The answer came 2 days later, when Angela called with news that made Maya's blood run cold. The welfare check on Veronica Lang's home had revealed exactly what Maya feared. The little girl, whose name was Brittany, had been living in conditions that made Angela's hands shake as she filed the emergency removal order. Multiple bruises in various stages of healing, malnutrition, signs of prolonged neglect. Veronica Lang had been arrested, and Brittany was now in protective custody. But here's what made Maya's fight personal. When Angela tried to file the initial report 3 days earlier, based on Maya's call to dispatch, the report had been blocked at the precinct level. Captain Foster had marked it as insufficient evidence and refused to forward it to CPS. He had deliberately delayed a child's rescue because the report came from Maya Brown. Maya sat in her small apartment with Duke's head resting on her knee, that information burning through her like wildfire. Foster hadn't just tried to destroy her career, had endangered a child to do it. That crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She called James. "I need everything you found. Every dispatch record, every reassignment, every officer he's pushed out. And I need contact information for the police union rep and the internal affairs division." "Maya, are you sure? Once you do this," a 7-year-old girl suffered for 3 extra days because Foster wanted to prove a point. "I'm done being quiet." The meeting happened at 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning in the office of Deputy Chief Karen Wallace, a no-nonsense woman who'd been with the department for 26 years. Maya walked in without her badge, but with a folder full of evidence, dispatch records showing systematic reassignment of her calls, documentation of Foster's previous department complaints, statements from Angela Price about the delayed child welfare report, and testimonies from 2 other officers who'd resigned under Foster's command. Captain Foster was already there, confident and composed, clearly expecting this to be a formality before Maya's termination became official. Deputy Chief Wallace looked at both of them with an expression that gave nothing away. "Officer Brown, you requested this meeting. You have the floor." Maya stood. Her voice was steady, clear, and full of quiet power. "Chief Wallace, for 6 months I've watched Captain Foster systematically target officers who prioritize community trust over arrest statistics. I accepted the shift changes. I accepted the increased scrutiny. But when his personal vendetta against me led to a child remaining in an abusive home for 3 additional days, days that could have killed her, I can't stay silent anymore." Foster's face darkened. "That's a serious accusation. It's documented fact," Maya said, sliding papers across the desk. "This is the dispatch record showing my report was received and flagged urgent. And this is Captain Foster's denial of the CPS referral, marked insufficient evidence. The child was removed 4 days later with injuries consistent with ongoing abuse. The room went very quiet. Deputy Chief Wallace read through every page with excruciating slowness. When she finally looked up, her eyes were hard. "Captain Foster, do you care to explain?" The investigation that followed moved faster than Maya expected. Deputy Chief Wallace didn't just review Foster's handling of Brittany's case, she ordered a full audit of every decision he had made since taking command. What they found was damning, a pattern of discrimination, evidence tampering, and abuse of authority that went far beyond what even Maya had suspected. Within 2 weeks, Captain Raymond Foster was placed on administrative leave pending criminal investigation. By the end of the month, Head resigned rather than face formal charges. The officers Head pushed out were contacted and offered reinstatement with back pay. The disciplinary actions against Maya were expunged from her record completely. But the real victory came on a sunny afternoon in November, when Maya walked through Palmer Park in her uniform, Duke trotting proudly beside her, and saw Brittany playing on the swings again. This time she was with a foster family, a kind-faced couple who watched her with genuine warmth, who laughed when she laughed and applauded when she jumped from the swing with pure childhood joy. Brittany saw Maya and Duke and her face lit up with recognition. She ran over, her foster mother following close behind. "That's the police lady," Brittany said, pointing at Maya. "And the smart dog." Maya knelt down to Brittany's level, her throat tight with emotion. "Hi there, sweetheart. You remember me?" Brittany nodded solemnly. "You helped me. The lady from the office said you made sure I was safe." Duke sniffed Brittany gently, his tail wagging, and the girl giggled with delight. Maya looked up at the foster mother, who extended her hand with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," the woman whispered. "Angela told us what you did. What you risked to make sure she was okay." Maya shook her head. "I was just doing my job." But she knew it was more than that. It was choosing to see, to care, to fight even when the system tried to silence her. Later that evening, Maya stood in her apartment with a cup of tea, Duke sleeping peacefully at her feet. Officer James had texted her earlier, "You changed everything. People are talking about coming forward, about how things should really be done. You gave them courage." Maya didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired, grateful, and deeply at peace. She'd fought not for glory or revenge, but for truth, for a little girl who needed someone to hear her silent cry for help, and for a community that deserved officers who truly cared. The next morning, she'd be back on her afternoon shift, walking the streets she knew by heart, Duke beside her, ready to serve with the same quiet dignity she'd always carried. And she'd do it knowing that sometimes the smallest acts of courage, the decision to see, to speak, to stand, could change everything. Justice didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered in the voice of a woman who refused to look away.